Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. So Anthony Yarde labors to a 10-round points decision win over Ralf Vilcans. Let's talk about it. The majority of people seem to be very disappointed with Anthony Yarde's performance. Let me explain to you why I'm not disappointed at all. Going into the fight, most people, perhaps even Anthony Yarde himself, assumed that Vilcans was going to be one of these miscellaneous Eastern European fighters with a padded record who get flown in to be cannon fodder, who might have relatively few losses, but they turn up with very little ambition and or talent. But it just so happens that Vilcans was quite a bit better than that. And that took Anthony Yarde by surprise, and it took the public by surprise. They didn't expect that he would put up that type of resistance. Now, Anthony Yarde has fallen short at world level twice, and he also lost to Lyndon Arthur. So we know what Anthony Yarde is. We know what his limitations are already before he fought Vilcans. He's a good fighter, but he's not an elite fighter. Therefore, why would it be so shocking for him to have issues with a guy like Vilcans? Again, Vilcans is not, clearly not, the typical miscellaneous pudding who's flown over to be cannon fodder. He's definitely better than that. He's tougher than those types of fighters. He's got more ability than those types of fighters. He showed good boxing skills, actually, particularly at long range. And to put things in perspective, Anthony Yarde, for my money at least, won at least a couple of the early rounds against Artur Beterbiev with his boxing skills. Yet Vilcans was giving him plenty of trouble at long range, hitting him with lots of shots. I thought his accuracy was good. I thought his jab was good. I thought his punch variety was good. He wouldn't just throw straight right hand. Sometimes he'd switch it to an uppercut. He'd vary the trajectory of the right hand. And as I say, he had plenty of ambition. He came to win. He was very stubborn in there. He wasn't intimidated, despite the fact he got dropped within, what was it, the first 10 seconds of the first round? If he was the typical miscellaneous Eastern European, he might have sat out the count. So I think we need to give Vilcans a bit of credit here. Not that he's elite himself, but that he is better than most of us thought he would be. Most of us expected him to be because of the fact that we've never heard of him before. And Anthony Yarde, in between fighting beasts like Beterbiev and Kovalev back in the days, he tends to fill his resume still with donuts and cream puffs. This was nearly a case of when cherry picking goes wrong. But as I say, I'm not disappointed with Yarde's performance because he's not an elite fighter anyway. So he's not going to perform great the way an elite fighter would, right? We know he has limitations. Now, with the expectations and backstory aside, this was actually a pretty good scrap between Yarde and Vilcans. Like, if you didn't know either fighter and you just took the fight for what it was, you'd have quite enjoyed that contest. Back and forth action. Because Anthony Yarde was getting outboxed, he abandoned the long range stuff and decided to just bulldoze his way in and try and overpower Vilcans. But Vilcans was resilient to that approach as well. He was actually not too bad on the inside. And for me, this fight was much, much, much closer than the referee Victor Lachlan scored it. He scored it 98-92 for Anthony Yarde. I mean, come on. You cannot tell me that Vilcans only won 2 rounds in this fight. You're having a laugh. The commentary was very biased as well, other than George Groves, who was kind of going against the grain. The other commentators were making out as though, yeah, Yarde was having a few issues here and there, but overall he was in complete control. I mean, give me a break. I wouldn't have complained with anyone scoring 4 or 5 rounds for Ralf Vilcans in this fight. With a knockdown for Yarde, that would have won him it by a point. I wouldn't have argued with that. I thought it was very close and very competitive all the way through. Now, some people are saying that getting that early knockdown might have been the worst thing to happen for Anthony Yarde in the fight because he then just assumed that he could knock this guy out whenever he chose to, and therefore maybe took his foot off the pedal mentally. And that might be the case. Maybe if he'd given Vilcans more respect earlier on, it would have turned out better for him. Possibly, but possibly not. It's all speculation at the end of the day. Now, the bigger picture here is how all of this plays into a potential Joshua Buatsi fight. Buatsi certainly looked a lot better against a far more known quantity in Willie Hutchinson than Yarde looked here against the unknown quantity in Ralf Vilcans. And after the fight, despite the fact that Yarde, at least for this particular contest, was being promoted by Ben Shalom, who also promote Joshua Buatsi, he seemed strangely non-committal on a Joshua Buatsi fight. And even more strange, at least to me, is that when they asked Joshua Buatsi about it, he was quite non-committal as well. And previously, let's say, whatever it was, 9-10 months, a year ago, Buatsi was very keen on it publicly, and it was only Yarde who was non-committal back then. But now they're both being non-committal. Very, very strange. Maybe they've come to some type of agreement behind the scenes between them, where they think that their respective promoters have been trying to sell them short with this fight. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there as a thought that I've had. I'm not saying it's correct. Whenever you're an outsider looking in, you have to come up with multiple different ideas, hypotheses, and then decide which one seems most probable based on the facts. Joshua Buatsi is the WBO interim light heavyweight champion right now, and Anthony Yarde is the #1 contender. So if the WBO were to strip Artur Beterbiev, if this rematch with Bivol goes ahead, then you certainly could have Buatsi versus Yarde for the vacant belt, which makes it all the more puzzling to me why both fighters would be non-committal at this stage. It seems like the natural fight to make. If that fight isn't made now, it might never happen, because Yarde, despite not being a lot older than Joshua Buatsi, he's certainly got a lot more miles on the clock. Buatsi is still unbeaten. Anthony Yarde has lost 3 times. So that's my take on it. Give me your take in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. I'm out.